Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I got 2 minutes, you guys, before I pull that card. I hope everybody is having an amazing day. A day that's finding you moving a little bit, bringing a little bit of change into your life, right? It's how we evolve. It's always in that change. And I know change is uncomfortable, but it's so necessary because in a standstill, right? We're not going to last very long, meaning we're going to go extinct. If you hang out with me, you know I am big on evolution. And I believe we are in a process, in a mix right in this moment where we are being pulled, right? We are being offered, we are being invited to get into the mix. And I believe that to be true. Change is so important. It's why I'm trying to add a little bit of change into my life. This week, I'm going to a music festival, 15 bands. I have been just wearing myself right to the ground in the preparation of it. It's a camping trip as such. I'm not going to be by myself, but again, it's introducing change into my life. I have been on my own, meaning I have been just kind of hanging out with myself for far too long. And it's important for me to get back into the mix. It's where I shine, it's because I shine. And, it's important for me to remind myself, right, that I'm human and this is a life that I get to take a shot at just once. And it is about getting into the mix and having fun, right? Lots of times it's just getting moving, right? That's why choices are so important because if you make a choice, that's a commitment to yourself. You keep to your word, right? You put a little bit of steam behind your word, and then you get to recognize maybe it's not so bad. I came into my live yesterday, right? Took me a moment to get into the card, but only a moment. And in that hesitation, I could have stalled out, but being determined to add to the mix, to bring about change for myself, knowing that if I don't bring that change into my life, right? That 45-degree turn that I bring about myself will end up being, right, a 180 or a 360s. And those are painful. Those are the ones that'll really kick you in the butt and get you moving. And when you get moving in the frazzle, right, that's when the hiccups start. It's just a matter of moving. And I'm big on baby steps. Okay, you guys, we're going to get right into the card tonight. And it's 54 powerful words. It's going to dictate what the conversation's going to be about tonight. It's the first perspective or thought that comes to my mind, and we'll just jump right into it from there. If it stays in that vicinity, great, right? But the idea is to make the entire podcast, the entire live, pertinent to the word that I pull. Okay, you guys. Hello, Tammy. Hello, Tammy. Here we go. And the word we have tonight is ooh. I know I said it yesterday, but I love this word, synthesis. When I talk about evolution, right? This synthesis plays such a huge role in evolution, right? We're not Neanderthals anymore. We're Homo sapiens, but we each one of us has between 2 and 3% Neanderthal DNA in us still, right? Those Neanderthals are still holding on. And wouldn't it be cool when we're in this stage of evolution, in this moment, if somehow that 2 to 3% Neanderthal in us gets to stay with us? Now, I know we have some characteristics that are from the Neanderthals that don't suit us really well, right? Because as Neanderthals, we were bent for strength, built for strength, right? We were built to be nomads and to be movers. We were built to be thinkers, right? To stress, to worry, to adapt, to conquer, and find a way. We didn't quite make it physically on the outside to this day and age. But genetically, in our blood, we certainly did, right? Synthesis is the understanding it takes all kinds to make the world. I love this word, synthesis. This was not a word I picked up until probably about, hmm, I would have to say 4 or 5 years ago. If you had mentioned this word to me, I'm not sure if I would have been able to give you a definition for it. But synthesis means the combination of different things to make a whole, right? The first thing that came to my mind, right? Racism, right? This is something of the past, and this is something you can give the credit to the children of the 80s and 90s because all the continents are so diverse in the cultures, and the children go to school and they mix and they interact, and children are so innocent, so beautifully innocent. They are not prejudiced, right, or judgmental the way adults grow up to be, right? It's the experience, it's the pain, it's the listening to other people's opinions and not holding true to your own opinion. But children are so beautiful and innocent. And those children in the 80s and 90s, their best friends in class were probably a different race, a different culture, a different religious idea as themselves. And they didn't look at it that way, right? The generation before them, epigenetically, these things are passed down from one generation to the next. And, right, we grow up with ideas instilled in us even before we get to school. And these children of the 80s and 90s were the first generation who never gave it a thought, right? You've heard me talk when it comes to evolution that, it takes a while to get used to an idea. Sometimes it has to start with you have to, right? Because The law says so, right? There's workplace regulations and rules that you've got to follow, and you can't break away from those. Otherwise, the company gets in trouble and fines. You could lose your job. And so we become a little bit resentful in that. But we have to do it because everybody's got to put a roof over their head, right? So it starts with tolerance. So you're tolerant because you have to. After a while, you just don't think too much about it because now you're used to it, right? You've gotten to that point of acceptance in what's different from you. And not only what's different from you, different in the way that you used to think, because now you're accepting, right? Then it gets to the point of, right, welcoming, accepting, welcoming, and you don't give any thought to it at all. I was saying in one of my shows last week, I came across on one of my walks, I went for a doozy walk today. Oh my goodness, it was such a walk. I was so bagged when I got home. I didn't know whether or not I could even stay awake for my life tonight. But in that consistency, I did it, and I'm no worse for wear. Again, it's just sometimes that matter of getting started. But I was out on a walk last week and I walked by the church, and I guess it was just after Pride Day. And they have a big sign with a glass cover, and I guess they change it every week. And this church was, wishing everybody a happy Pride Day. And then underneath that, they wrote, "See you on Sunday. Everybody's welcome here." Growing up in the 60s and 70s, you would have never seen anything like that, right? There was a time that church might have even been burnt down. But not only is it tolerated, which it shouldn't even have to be tolerated. It should automatically not even been given a thought in any way. We should be judging people for the people that we are, right? The inside, not necessarily even the outside in any capacity. Me growing up, that caused me so many issues. I really do believe it takes all kinds to make the world, because it gets us to that point where you don't have a choice. You have that silly idea, you can't voice it, you can't do anything about it. Suck it up, baby. Be tolerant of that, right? Then your kids don't hear about those silly ideas that you have, right? And then they get to make their own choices into how they want to think about things. But they don't think anything about it, right? So it's not even a thought. So eventually, like I said, epigenetically, these not just good things get passed, bad things get passed, thoughts get passed, traditional ideas, political ideas, right? Just so many different ideas get passed down from one generation to the next. But we can see how synthesis works, right? Just in how far we've come since Martin Luther King. How far have we come? That is truly something to be proud of, to be able to get that kind of silly stuff behind us. People grumble and complain about how bad the world is. It's the worst of times ever, right? It's not. It's only because we dwell on the negative. We dwell on the things that don't go well, And of course, right, because we got mouths and ideas and we're brave enough to shoot it out there, right, that we are our biggest wrenches in the engine. And that's the truth. But we're getting better, aren't we? And it starts with tolerance. And that synthesis of all kinds mixing, right? It's still difficult, right? Because even in my own family, my father was spiritual, my mother loved Jesus. That was a trip, right? Especially in the 60s and 70s. But my parents agreed that the kids were going to make their own minds up. It's not like my mother didn't try, right? She loved Jesus. She wasn't just quite sure what denomination she was, and she dragged us from one church to the next. But in free choice, when I hit 12, right, that was it for me, right? Because I didn't have fine examples of Christians in my life. Now, not to say that there aren't fine Christians out there. I know beautiful Christians, right? I have lots of amazing Christians that come into my life, and I'm grateful for that, right? But I'm also grateful to understand that I am an amalgamation, right? I am a synthesis of all kinds. I love history. I'm going back, but how far back in my bloodline, right? How many different religious ideas, how many different countries has my bloodline lived in, right? And that's pretty cool to think of it, right? And maybe we missed a step somewheres along the line. But I truly believe that those missteps that we take in our life are actually directives. So I don't worry about them too much, right? And lots of people, they would take a look at my life and my family, and you would see those archetypes. You would see that stuff that was epigenetically passed down from one generation to the next. But it only takes one person to change that idea. It's a different story moving forward with my nieces and my great nieces and nephews, right? Like, it's such a different story. And it's a good story. It's movement, it's evolution. And we're moving forward even within my own family. It just takes one person to say, that's it. That's a silly idea, right? Maybe it starts with tolerance, then it gets to acceptance, then it gets to welcoming, then it just every day, right? That we're not making it a big deal. We're not having to put big billboards up to acknowledge things because it's the norm, right? And that's what synthesis does for us, right? It mixes all kinds in a community like Greenwich Village, right? That it is an amalgamation and a true amalgamation now of all different cultures, right? All different cultures. And I tell you, right? Prejudice was so prevalent even when I was growing up. And I learned that within my own household. I learned that from the other school kids in class, right? Emulating what they were taught. So I am really, really happy to say, right, that we are doing so much better It's understanding. It takes all kinds to make the world. And every person's getting to the point where they're all kinds, right? We're all going to be Heinz 57, right? Maybe there'll be, and there is, right? Different shades of, what do you call it? I was going to say gray, but it just doesn't fit in the conversation, right? But it's so true that maybe that somewheres down the line might not be for thousands and thousands of years, but we're getting better. Hello, Eugene. Hello, Eugene. We got this word synthesis today. But synthesis truly does mean putting a whole bunch of different things together to make a whole. And if you look at this world right now, you can see a lot of that button head that we're doing with each other and other places in the world. It's because they're fighting that, right? They haven't quite gotten to that point of, well, tolerance, right? And it is in that breaking that down where it gets to the point where, oh my goodness, right? I better at least cross my T's and dot my I's and keep my mouth shut. If I don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? And when it goes quiet that way, then you're not influencing the next generation, right? To go off and do some of those silly things that keep this rubbing each other badly still in play, right? I suspect this is going to go on for thousands and thousands of years. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a slow process, but we're seeing it like in my own lifetime. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that progress. And I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's pretty incredible when possibly I might have thought at one time, yeah, I don't think so. Right? Right? And yet here we are. And we're still grumbling that this world is just falling apart. It's just the worst thing ever going on. And yet we have these amazing amalgamations, assimilations, right? And again, the first thing that just popped into my head right now is the rural schools here in Canada. We didn't do so well in welcoming and being welcomed by communities that were here long before we were ever here. And yet we collected those children and tore them away from their families and tried to turn them into Europeans, right? We did that. And that's a discredit to this country in all honesty, right? But we didn't even have tolerance at that point. And this is the way we were thinking in that assimilation and that amalgamation that we were going to bring everybody into the fold, but not even giving them a chance to decide what fold did they want to belong to, right? There was no free choice in that. And we forced something to happen. And so there is resentment, understandably, in that, right? It's better when it gets to the point where, we're not giving it any thought, right? It's not in the headlines, it's not on billboards, it's not the topic of discussion, that it becomes the norm because it truly is important to understand, right? It takes all kinds to make the world. I'm going to tell you a little story about where I got that. It's one of my mission statements, you guys. I have two mission statements. This one, it takes all kinds to make the world. And the second one is life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. Two mission statements, right? This one here, I'm not taking credit for this one, but the story, and Tammy's heard this one before, right? I used to work in a retail lumber store, kind of a Home Depot kind of store, but Canadianized, right? And and they were cutting staff, and they hired this floater, and a floater is somebody supposed to be able to do a little bit of everything. I was the only floater in that whole place, but they needed to add somebody to the team because they had let so many people going. Right, you're starting up a business, you get on the skeleton crews, you do the very best you can in making those cuts so your business doesn't go under. I get it, right? But they hired this kid. This kid, he was sweet. I'll say that. He was sweet and he was funny. He was 16 years old, so you give him credit that he wasn't quite there yet in some of the understandings of responsibilities and team playing and stuff. And I was running the store. Like, this was a big, big store with lots of departments in it and everything, and he was supposed to be there to help me, and I couldn't find him. And I went looking for him, and he was sitting at the cash register on the cash counter where people walk through like you're going to the grocery store. He was sitting there chatting up the cashier, hitting on her. Just and I just like, what are you doing? And I'm sorry, I can't even remember his name. I wouldn't mention his name anymore. What are you doing? Go mix some paint. Go help them at the sales desk. Go into the receiving and see if they need some help pulling lumber out of the backyard. Right? What are you doing? And he just looks at me. He goes, "Oh my goodness, Cindy, calm down. It takes all kinds to make the world." And I just burst out laughing because it was so true, right? It does take all kinds to make the world. And he was fully admitting that maybe he wasn't the most perfect employee. He didn't last too much further after that incident, right? But, I have to remember that we all contribute something different to the pot, right? And my husband was that person, right? He wasn't super talented in a lot of things, but one thing that he was talented in was keeping up the morale. That was the first thing that hit me when I burst out laughing that day when he said that. It takes all kinds to make the world, because I remember, yes, it does. And my husband was in the military, and when you're in the trenches, my husband would have been the person that you would want beside your side, because he would have kept the morale up. He would have kept everybody smiling and laughing and thinking that everything was going to be okay, because he was an expert in what he did there. And, he wasn't much good for much else. He was cute, but, right? It takes all kinds to make the world. And everybody has a gift, an indispensable gift. But we're not allowing people into our vicinity to share that gift with us, right? That's what makes a village. What time is it? Oh, I still got some time, because you know what I'm going to tell? I'm going to tell a story. Cabbage soup, you guys, right? In this idea that there was this grifter, this traveling man. It was during the plague, and he just went from village to village, hoping for a few scraps of food, a place to put his head down at night, maybe find himself a girlfriend, right? But he came into this village and it was just dark and dreary. And he could see people peeking out of the curtains of their houses, but nobody came out to the courtyard. He was right in the middle of the courtyard. Nobody came out into the courtyard. And then finally, this head poked out the door, and it happened to be like the mayor of this village, right? And the guy says, "Do you have any food? Do you have anything to eat?" Right? And he said, the mayor says, "No, there's nothing. Nobody has anything. We're all starving here. We're trying to stay safe." And the traveling man, he says, "Yeah, but everybody is coming out of their houses now. Like, how come you guys are still inside your houses?" And the mayor says, "Nobody wants to get sick, right?" And he says, "Well, I can make cabbage. Oh, sorry. I can make stone soup, not cabbage soup. Stone soup. I can make stone soup." And the mayor's eyes pop out of his head. "Yeah, right. You make stone soup?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I can make stone soup, right? Get me a cauldron." He says, "Well," the mayor says, "Okay, I'll give you a cauldron, right? And I need some water for that cauldron." He says, "Yeah, I'll get you some water. You can make some stone soup." He says, "Oh, yeah, I can make the most amazing stone soup ever, right? And it'll be enough to feed the entire village, right?" And everybody's still peeking out their curtains, trying to see what's going on, right? They set up the cauldron in the middle of the village in the court, in the square, right? They get that water boiling. The guy goes out to the side of the road and he grabs this great big giant monster rock, gives it a little wash, and he drops it into the cauldron. That fire's burning away, right? The traveling man says, "Oh, it's starting to smell good, you guys, right? It's starting to smell good. The only thing that would make this better is if we had an onion, right?" Now there's heads poking out the door, right? Because something's going on. Everybody has been locked up in their houses for how long during the plague? Everybody's so scared. Everybody's so hungry, right? And next thing you know, the mayor's wife says, "I can spare an onion." And they come out with the onion and they peel it and they chop it all up and they throw it in this big cauldron, stone soup, right? You know how onion smells when it starts cooking. So there's a little bit of scent, and that scent is wafting in the courtyard, right? And then he says, "Oh my goodness, this smells so good. I'm so looking forward to a great big bowl of soup." And he looks over at some guy who's got his head stuck out the door and he says, "Oh my goodness, get out here and smell this. It smells so amazing," he says. "And there's going to be lots for everybody." And he's yelling across the street, right? And so people cautiously come out of their houses and they haven't been outside in the longest for the longest time. Everybody is skinny and disheveled and cautious and afraid, and they come up and they could smell the onion going on in this big cauldron, and everybody's going, "Oh, that smells so good. When is it going to be ready?" "Maybe an hour, right? Maybe it'll be ready in an hour." And it does smell good, doesn't it? Right? But if we had a carrot to go in there, right? Everybody's just hoarding their food. Everybody is just hiding everything because they're so afraid. They don't know, how long this being locked up in their houses is going to be. And in technicality, they should have been out of their houses and getting their lives back together a long time ago, right? But everybody was too scared. including the mayor, who was making sure everybody was staying indoors. Lady across the street says, I can spare 2 carrots, right? I can spare 2 carrots. She runs back into her house and brings out 2 carrots, and they peel the carrots, and right, but even the peel went into the pot because we don't waste anything because everybody's so hungry. Now everybody's coming out of their house, warming their hands around the campfire with this big cauldron on that. The smell is just filling up the whole courtside. People start talking to each other. A lady comes up. She goes, I've got a cabbage. What do you think? Should we chop it up and put it in the soup? Guy says, oh, wow, that's going to be amazing, right? And then they chop up that cabbage. The next thing you know, somebody comes in. He says, I'm going to give you one of my chickens. I'm going to give you one of my chickens. I had to chop it up for the family for dinner tonight, right? It was probably going to be the only meal that we had this week, but that soup is smelling really good. And I bet you one of my skinny old chickens will be absolutely amazing in that soup, right? They cut that head off the chicken and they plucked its feathers off, right? Skinned it, gutted it, didn't waste too much, threw it all into the cauldron. That soup was enough to feed the whole town for a few days, not just for that night. Next thing you know, everybody is talking and smiling. The girls are all running back into the house and they're putting on their nice dresses and fixing their hair. A couple of the guys ran into their houses, grabbed fiddles, right? Tambourines, and came back out, and they started dancing and singing and playing and partying, and they were eating stone soup, right? It takes all kinds to make the world. Everybody has something to contribute. And in contributing, we get to the point of acceptance and welcoming, maybe coming alive again. Remember, that traveler was a grifter, right? He was somebody who marketed, who kind of wrangled his way into people's lives in order to get what he needed to survive himself. And yet, without even him understanding what he was doing, he brought an entire village together, brought them back to life, right? That's a synthesis because it does take all kinds to make the world, right? We can look at somebody and go, oh my goodness, he's the scariest person in the world, get away from me. And yet, he could be a mechanic, and you all of a sudden go to start your car, and your car breaks down, and he's coming and offering you to help fix your car. And you were just thinking and saying nasty things about him, right? That's the prejudice, right? This is the stuff that we have to learn not to. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for a word. When somebody is stereotyped, right? Where we label people, rather people labeling themselves, right? That village came to life. They came together, a whole bunch of different people, adding a whole bunch of different vegetables to that stone soup and a chicken, right? And people who maybe didn't have anything to contribute to that soup went and got musical. instruments and brought the party alive, right? And that's what makes a village. That's synthesis, right? That's understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world. Okay, you guys. Not bad. I didn't make it to the full hour, 45 minutes, but that's good with me. Let me come into the comments here for a minute and see what's going on here. And tonight's powerful word on Tuesday night, August 4th, 2026 is perspective, is synthesis. The United States did the same thing, Cindy, not accepting certain cultures and groups, and many suffered because of it. Some even died too. But that was the case all over the world, Tammy, right? And you know, Martin Luther King, he was an American. He stepped forward first. It only takes one person to step forward and say, that will be my job. I will take responsibility for that because I think I'm the best person to do that job, right? And he struggled and he suffered in that, didn't he? And he wasn't exactly a perfect person in his own personal life, right? And that's the truth. None of us are perfect. And yet, we all feel like we have the right to throw that first stone at somebody just because it goes against our grain. And if you really look at what your grain is, you'll recognize going against your grain was really just going against your parents' grain, your great grandparents' grain, because these are things that are just passed down from one generation to the next. So, this is the idea that I'm going to keep in my head, because I am going to a music festival and volunteering. I'll be working the gate. I will be mixing with lots of people, probably mixing with more people than I've been mixing with in a few years anyway, right? Well, a couple of years. No, maybe a year. I mixed pretty good at my last job, but it's been a long time since I've been in the mix of all kinds. And I hope I can be that example. I hope that I could be like that grifter, that traveler, right? That came into a village and brings everybody together, brings everybody come alive, right? I could do that. If it's my job, I could do that. But maybe somebody else wants to be the star of that show. And I'm good with that too. The whole idea is that I'm just getting into the mix, right? Being that example for others of what a good time is really like. That's what I'd like to think. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I'm over prepping a lot and I've got to compact it a little bit more because I have to leave a little bit of room so my brother in law, my sister can get some of their camping gear into my vehicle too. And I still have my filming equipment to put together, right? I've got it all lying and charging and stuff. But I've got to put it all in bags and cases and stuff. And I've got to pick my outfits. Right? I think I need a party outfit, right? I do. But keeping in mind the weather is going to be a good time. I'll be filming it for everybody. It'll be one of the outdoor explorers. When I get back the first day, I'll probably crash. I went for the longest walk today, but not only did I go for a huge long walk, I I hauled uh, clothes because I stopped at a little thrift store and bought some outfits that all had to be washed today. So I did 3 loads of laundry too. groceries, oh my goodness, and a walk home that just, when I got home, I just wanted to flop. I actually just thought, oh, Cindy, you need to go to bed, right? I could have easily taken a nap, but I had laundry to do, groceries to put away, prep to do, a little packing to do, and right? Nobody's going to do it for me, so I've got to get it done. And if I don't get it done, I'm going to forget things. And we don't want that to happen, do we? I like this word synthesis. It's a beautiful, beautiful word. It's all kinds coming together to make a whole. And it's a beautiful, beautiful word. It even sounds beautiful when you say it, right? And it's true, and it's part of evolution. That's what diversity is, in bringing together the opposites, because that's how we're going to get to the point where we're not opposites anymore. Maybe we'll just get to the point where we'll just get into a ring and just rather than shooting off bombs and stuff like that, right? In good sportsmanship, like the Olympics, right? FIFA and uh, marathons, like just in good sportsmanship in that competition, because there's nothing wrong with friendly competition. There really isn't. It's when we go for the jugulars because somebody is not like us, because we perceive somebody to be on the other side on the fence. And if we don't take that out, it's going to be big problems. No, don't take that out, because that person just might have a big stone to drop into a cauldron, right? And get the party rolling. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. I'll be back tomorrow pulling out a new card. I hope everybody's having a great night. I'm going to try and stay up as late as I can. Otherwise, I'm going to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to tidy up, maybe do a little bit more packing, and we'll call it a night. You guys have a great night.